Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever struggled with an autoimmune disorder, hypothyroid or hyperthyroid, then do we have the Hashimoto's Protocol for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Izabella Wentz, one of the pioneering experts in lifestyle interventions for treating Hashimoto's thyroiditis. She's also the New York Times best-selling author of Hashimoto's Thyroiditis, Finding and Treating the Root Cause, and her latest Hashimoto's Protocol. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about a 90-day plan for reversing thyroid and autoimmune disorder symptoms and getting your life back. That plus we'll talk about lipstick and lupus, sick-building syndrome, soy and lecithin, the power of self-love, turmeric tea, probiotic toothpaste, and what in the world an adorable Pomeranian has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Izabella. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready, Michael. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Before we dive right into things, would you mind if we go back in time a little bit? Can you tell us the first time your mom took you to a pharmacy and what that meant to you?
So I grew up in a medical clinic, and my mom was always my role model. I really looked up to her and just wanted to be just like her when I grew up. When I was probably 4 years old, maybe 5 years old, my mom took me to the local pharmacy, and this was just a big, aha moment, transformational moment for me, because I saw all of these different medicines everywhere, and the women at the pharmacy were in charge of giving people access to these healing medicines. And that was one of the defining moments in my young life that led me to want to become a pharmacist, and I ended up pursuing that degree and got my PharmD degree in my 20s. And that's part of my journey to becoming a healer.
Beautiful. So then if we go back in the journey a little bit again, we won't go quite all the way back to the age of 5. First off, what were your energy levels growing up and until you got to college?
So my energy levels when I was in high school and when I was in elementary school, I was always bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right? And I remember waking up in the morning, and I would go to get ready, I would exercise, I would sometimes even work before going to school. And I was just this bundle of energy, and everything was easy for me. I was laughing a lot. I was had a lot of fun. That was me in high school, but that all changed during my first year in college.
Now, your first year in college, we may come back to it, but I guess you had a trauma, a loved one passing away from you, and then you started to get sick a lot, if I understand.
Yeah, during my first year in undergrad, I actually had a bout with mono, the Epstein-Barr virus, and I didn't really know that I had it, and all of a sudden I was getting up in the morning and not having the same level of energy that I used to. One day, it was my freshman year in college. This was finals week, right?
Yeah.
I jump out of bed at 9 a.m. and I look around and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm still wearing the clothes from the day before. And I had a final exam that started at 7:30 that morning. The day before, I had laid down to take a nap at 3 p.m. I was supposed to take like a 15, 20-minute power nap so that I could study the entire rest of the day after class for my exam. But I just went to take a nap, and I didn't wake up until the following morning until 9 a.m. And needless to say, I didn't do so well in that class or in school that semester. I was quite devastated. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with me, and my parents didn't know. It was like all of a sudden I changed. I went home that summer, and my parents were used to seeing one type of Izabella that was sort of, very spunky and had a lot of, I was always very opinionated and very, very kind of, fun and outgoing. And all of a sudden, I was kind of a shell of what I used to be. I had a really hard time in making decisions. I was always really tired. I would be going to bed at like 9 or 10 and waking up at 3 p.m. the following day. And that was pretty much my life. And my parents were very, very concerned. So they took me to a psychologist who determined that I was depressed. And of course, that was never really what was going on. I was actually sick, and that was the beginning of of my thyroid problem.
It's interesting. We were talking off air before about how my wife got mold toxicity syndrome. And when people have autoimmune disorders, the first thing you think is it's either in your head or you're just depressed, or even they'll say you're lazy. Why don't you just get up and start doing something?
Exactly. So you either get you're crazy, you're lazy, or, it's in your head, or in some cases. And with thyroid disease, people have a hard time with their weight. And so thyroid disease slows down our metabolism and makes us more likely to gain weight. So then in those cases, people get like, oh, well, you're just fat, or you're not taking care of yourself. And so I got a lot of the lazy during my days, where people kind of teased me and said, oh, you sleep so much, you're so lazy, or it must be so nice to sleep so much. But it was like, yeah, I just couldn't function. And even when I was awake, I was pretty exhausted.
What did you do then? Because you made it through grad school, or you made it through undergrad school, and then you made it through your pharmacological program. What were you doing to get yourself going and to keep yourself going? And it sounded like you'd get up for class, work throughout the days, collapse, and then go again.
Yeah. So I would basically, I built my life around school and studying and my sleep schedule. So those are my three main things. So I really cut back on a lot of things that the typical young adult would do, like spending time with friends or going out. So I would, I would study, and then I would go take an exam, and then I would sleep after the exam. And then I'd wake up and I'd study again. So that was pretty much my pattern for pretty much almost 6 years of going to undergrad and grad school. Were there some glimmers of hope? Because I know you were going through a lot of tests during this time. You had to be pulling out your hair, what's going on. But you're also in a medical program. And so your gears must have really been turning during this time. I mean, it's funny because when you're in a program like that, you end up thinking you have every single condition that they're talking about, right? And I was like, oh, wow, I've got these symptoms. But I would go to the doctors, and unfortunately, the conventional medical training that I went through is for a lot of the problems that I was having, there was really no solution. The interesting thing about being in a medical program like I was at the time is that you learn about so many different conditions. And so, of course, I thought I had every single condition, whether it was like the rarest kind of infectious disease or any kind of other thing going on. The challenge was that my training, which was in conventional medicine, whenever you had any of these conditions, there was never really that much to offer besides medications. And so during my first year of pharmacy school, I actually developed irritable bowel syndrome. And of course, there were medications for that. And, my fatigue and sleeping a lot, there was really not a medication for it. The solutions that I was sort of proposed were to take stimulant drugs, which I wasn't particularly interested in. I did take a medication known as Wellbutrin that did have, it's an antidepressant. It's used for smoking cessation. It also has some effect on helping people study and stay awake longer. And I do think that helped me get through pharmacy school. But at the same time, this medication can actually mask thyroid disorders as well.
Wow. And this is a total aside, but it was something I found interesting. You talk about how there's a big lag in the medical community between what we know works and getting proof behind that. And you had somebody tell you, hey, the generic Wellbutrin isn't actually working when the regular did. And that's something I had actually experienced. I was diagnosed with ADD twice as a kid and as an adult, and for many years was on meds, and since then was able to rewire and totally dropped that for over a decade. But I found that the generic wasn't working for me as well. We are so sensitive to chemicals, we have absolutely no idea. Yeah, it's really interesting because a lot of times it's patients and the consumers that get these things, and then they tell their doctors, but for whatever reason, it's just like it doesn't get translated. It's almost like a game of telephone where it never really quite gets back to the community. So for one example, when I was in pharmacy school, we learned that thyroid hormones were used to treat thyroid disorders, and levothyroxine was the drug of choice. It's just T4. Now, talking to most thyroid patients,
they don't feel well with this drug, but yet still the standard of care is to use it. And then endocrinologists will tell patients that, oh no, everything else is in your head. And then when you start getting into more of natural medicine and you start talking to patients, they actually feel significantly better using a different type of combination of thyroid hormones. And it's just kind of amazing. There's like almost this huge disconnect between what's happening in the real world and then what's taught in the medical schools and pharmacy school, nursing schools. And there's like these two different worlds colliding. And in the end, we're all humans, right? And so we're all going through this experience. For me, it took having my own health journey, health experience to actually become, the compassionate person that I am today. When people were coming into the pharmacy complaining about having symptoms when they had thyroid disorders and saying that the generic thyroid hormones didn't work as well, I was sort of like, well, I don't know what you're complaining about. You take the medications, like you should be fine. And it was almost like we were taught in school to sort of ignore the patients, which is a crime in a sense, because yes, the books say this, yes, the studies say this, but what does the person actually say? What is their experience like?
I wonder if what kind of shattered you out of that paradigm was, I think it was 26 or 27, you're diagnosed with a condition that you formerly thought is something that comes much later in life, if at all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I was in my pharmacy studies, we learned that thyroid disorders sort of just happened as people got older, and they're autoimmune, and there's one drug used to treat them. And I, for whatever reason, and this isn't correct, but I was sort of categorizing them as something that happens when you just get older. You're not producing any more hormones, something like menopause, and then maybe you don't produce enough thyroid hormones. And so I just was prepared to take thyroid hormones when I was in my 70s. But here I was shocked when I was 27, and I was told that my thyroid gland was being destroyed by my immune system, and I was becoming hypothyroid, and that I would have to get on the thyroid hormones. And to me, this was, at first, it was validating, and I felt relieved. Like, finally, I have a condition. Finally, like, it's not just in my head, because for so many years, my experience was this, and I think other people with thyroid disorders, autoimmune disorders, struggle with this as well, is they almost feel like they are hypochondriacs because they look healthy on the outside, and then they tell people they're not feeling well, and people sort of just brush them off. So in a way, for me, it was kind of like validating, like, oh, wow, finally, all these people that called me lazy, like, look at me now, I actually am sick. Like, and it was kind of odd to think about that a part of me was actually happy and validated. But I hear that a lot.
It's also kind of a mind bender, because on the one hand, it's good you have a direction in theory to go on. On the other hand, you have a label and a weight that has just been put upon you. You have X, Y, Z, and that's going to be with you for life.
Yeah, that was the second part. So that was the scary part, because I was so young and my whole life was ahead of me. I had just gotten married, and I had learned about all these problems with having a thyroid condition. People were saying that you just never quite get better. You lose your hair never comes back. You just will continue to have struggles with your weight, and you might have trouble with having children. And that was really hard for me, because I was supposed to be in my prime. And basically the answer was that it's just going to get worse. And so that was tough to bear.
So as you're going through this, as you're processing this, I think your health is still struggling along, and then your memory starts going on you, like you're going, I want to talk to you about that. What do you call that furry thing sitting next to you, Michael? That's a... Right. That was really hard for me, because I had always been pretty sharp. I was, like a straight A student, and I was very ambitious. And even though I started to have the fatigue in undergrad and in pharmacy school, my brain was still there. Like, I was still pretty sharp, and I was still able to remember facts and study and do well on my exams. But then after that, all of a sudden, my memory started to go, and I would go into work meetings, and we would be talking in these meetings, and I had to
I just always had to have a notebook with me, and I would write down like every single word that was said during the meeting. I was like a transcriptionist pretty much, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to remember anything from the meeting. And my husband was the first person that kind of brought this to my attention. I sort of knew that there was things like this happening, that my memory wasn't as good, but I kind of thought like I was doing a good job of hiding it, right? Because I was like, oh, well, maybe nobody's noticing. Maybe it's just me. And then all of a sudden, my husband kind of made like one of those loving teasing remarks about, honey, do you want me to write that down for you? Because we know how your memory is. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've always had such a good memory. And I remember people would be like, how do you remember this thing that happened 20 years ago? Like, do you have, photographic memory and all that? And so all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, what's going on with me? And my brain was always really important to me as a person who's very studious. And it was really hard.
Wow. And it sounds like maybe the last straw before you said, we've got to make a change, we've got to find a way, is your husband's going out. Was he going out for runs or something? And then 15 minutes into it, you're panicking and wondering what's happened to him.
Yeah, exactly. So my husband used to run ultra marathons, and he was a very avid runner, which I greatly admired about him. At the same time, I would worry so much every time he would go out running. He would say, I'm just going to take a little run around the neighborhood. I'll be back in an hour. Then an hour and 5 minutes would pass. He would, get into nature, or maybe he wanted to push himself a little bit more to prepare for his marathons. And I would be freaking out. And, I would call him, and if I couldn't get a hold of him, which I often couldn't, because he was, like in the running in forests and places where there wasn't good phone reception, then I would call like the non-emergency police number and the local hospitals to ask them if there was a runner that had collapsed or been hit by a car. And when they were like, no, ma'am, there's nobody here like that, like we didn't have any reports, then I would be like, okay, I know what happened. He must have met another woman while running and then ran off with her.
Oh.
Yeah, and I knew it wasn't rational, but it's something I couldn't help. And I would just be in the bathroom crying with my little dog next to me, licking my tears, because I was like, oh no, I'm never going to see my husband again. And it was like, it happened probably a couple of times a week.
Well, I guess I'm positive it made for some happy reunions.
Definitely happy reunions, but it was also very, very stressful too for me and for him, because he felt, like he was confused. He was like, well, honey, I'm just going out running, and it was like 5-10 minutes. And within the course of that 5-10 minutes, I would have a panic attack.
Wow. So you said something important in your book, really important, and this was something I found with Jessica, my wife, and overcoming her condition as well. You said you made a decision that if your clients could be happy with their limitations and keep going, then you could do the same. I decided that if I was going to be a person with Hashimoto's, I would be the healthiest person possible with Hashimoto's. Yeah,
that was a really big turning point for me, because I was sort of faced with some choices, right? Whenever you get a diagnosis and you're told that there's no cure, there's nothing you can really do, you can sort of listen to that and deteriorate, or you could take it as a personal challenge, which is what I did, where I said, okay, well, let me try. You say that there's nothing I could do lifestyle, and you say that pretty much all I can do for my symptoms is to take these hormones, and if they don't help, then I can just take, antidepressants or other medications. But let me just try. Let me just try to put my brain to it. Let me give it my best effort and see what I can do. I had been working with people with developmental disabilities as a consultant pharmacist for quite some time, and I was really inspired by them, because many times they had so many limitations. We had clients with cerebral palsy who were in wheelchairs, and they still gave it their all. They still showed up with a smile on their face, with a great attitude. We had clients with all kinds of limitations and disabilities, from intellectual to physical, and yet, they still laughed, they still enjoyed life. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to do the same. I need to be the kind of person that can inspire others, because there's so much negativity in the world, and there's so many challenges. We all have challenges. Like, this is my challenge. I'm going to do my best. And at that point is when I became Hashimoto's expert / human guinea pig and started working towards getting myself better.
Woohoo! What were some of the early steps you took as Hashimoto's guinea pig number 1?
Guinea pig number 1. So I first, definitely dove into research mode, and I started looking at research articles and patient forums, which is things I was doing for my clients, because a lot of times they had rare disorders that were not properly discussed in the conventional medical world. So I was basically did what I would do for somebody else for myself. And after that, of course, I saw a bunch of different specialists, and initially it was in the conventional medical world, and started running some ideas by them. So I was like, to the endocrinologist, there's this study about gluten and how gluten and thyroid disease can be connected. And of course, unfortunately, he kind of poo-pooed my idea. And at first I got discouraged, but I just said, okay, I just have to keep moving forward. I ended up trying various things. One of them was a medication known as low-dose naltrexone that can be very, very helpful for people with autoimmune disease and can help to put it into remission. Fortunately, it didn't work for me. It works for about half of the people. For me, it wasn't something that worked, but I just kind of kept going, and I said, okay, what else can I do? What else can I try? I ended up having a lot of success within 3 days of changing my diet. So I went gluten-free and dairy-free. Yep. And then within 3 days, and at first I just did it because, I was like, okay, I committed to this. I said I would do it, and I'm just going to try it, right? I could always go back. And within 3 days, my acid reflux that had been with me for 3 years was gone. So I was taking 3 different antacid medications, and they still were not controlling my acid reflux properly. I was coughing all the time. It was very stressful for me. I could barely sleep through the night without having a coughing fit. And within 3 days, I was like, wait a minute, I haven't had my acid reflux. Wait a minute, I don't actually need to reach for more of my medications. So I was able to get off of my acid reflux medications within 3 days. My irritable bowel syndrome that was with me for almost a decade at that point, that was gone. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not running to the bathroom, and my, bowel movements are actually like not really odd looking and all over the place. And my bloating was gone. So I had always really liked exercising and working out, but I never felt like it paid off, especially in my stomach. I always had like a bit of a belly, right? And all of a sudden, my stomach was flat for the first time in years. And I was like, wow, actually, like all of those exercises that I'd been doing were working. You could actually see muscles. Prior to that, it was always bloated, and my stomach was always achy. I just thought it was normal to have a stomach ache after eating. And then that was gone. And this was just amazing to be able to do that with just changing my diet around.
So from diet, what was guinea pig number 2 then?
Well, after that, I started going through a variety of different things. One of the things that was really, really helpful for me was doing a digestive enzyme known as betaine with pepsin. And I started taking this with my protein-containing foods. The amazing thing is, once I got to the right dose of it, I went from sleeping 11 hours a night to like 7 hours a night, and jumping out of bed bright-eyed and bushy-tailed like I used to be, like in high school and in my early college days. And I was like, wow, this is what happens when you actually digest your food. For so many years, I hadn't been digesting my food. And it makes sense because when you sleep, and it makes sense why I was so tired, because sleep is when you do primary digestion, and digestion is a big job for the body. And when you're not digesting properly, your body's utilizing all this energy for digestion. Once you're able to digest your foods, you can actually have more energy back. So it was almost like this burden of digestion was lifted. That morning that I woke up at 5 a.m. I didn't have to start work until 9 a.m. And that was when I started writing my first book, Hashimoto's The Root Cause. Because I was like, okay, if I can get back to myself after this was over a decade of being exhausted, and I could find myself again and have that energy once more, then I can overcome this condition, and I could write about it, and I can help others overcome it as well. And that was really I wrote the first chapter of my first book at that point. And then I just kept going and kept figuring out like what all of the things that were out of balance in my body. And with every intervention, I got better and better.
So I want to dive into a bunch of the interventions, and everybody, if you're interested, you're going to want to go out and get Hashimoto's Protocol, because there's way more than we could possibly cover in a little bit under an hour here. With that said, what is a root cause rebel?
A root cause rebel is somebody that doesn't accept the status quo. This is somebody that looks at what they want out of life and looks at what's out there, and they say, I'm going to make a choice for myself. So this is somebody that goes against the grain. This is somebody that says, I don't have to be like everybody else. I'm going to choose my path, and I'm going to do what's best for me. And the root cause rebel doesn't listen to naysayers. They don't listen to what the conventional paradigm says. They listen to their own bodies and do what they want. I feel like being a rebel is much more empowering than being a patient. And it's much more empowering than even being a warrior. I know some people will say, I'm an XYZ disease warrior, I'm a thyroid warrior. But problem is with autoimmune disease, when you're a warrior, it kind of reinstates the fact that, in autoimmune disease, it's you attacking you. And you don't necessarily want to be a warrior and you don't want to continue fighting, because that implies a constant struggle. So if you could be a rebel and set your own path and blaze your own trail, that's the way that you recover your health, and in a very positive way, very empowered way. And, you stop fighting yourself. You go with yourself.
I like that. We don't really need to dive into it here today. I want to talk about more of your story, but I struggled with irritable bowel syndrome for, a good dozen years, and many visits to the ER and looking like Santa Claus. I was so bloated. And I remember my first GI specialist, who I guess I was a bit of a rebel because he fired me as a doc. Because I just wouldn't accept that you just are as you are, and what are you doing bothering me?
Yeah, it's very, very disappointing to get that from doctors, right?
Yeah, that one and I can't believe I'm going to share this on here, but to hear the interns in the background saying, well, this guy's just FOS. And meaning that my digestion had slowed down enough that I had filled up with what inside. But the doctors were actually saying that off to my side because I had become just something on a chart, rather than a person who has feelings and can heal. And in fact, you talk about something called root cause reflection. A lot of this is an inner healing, isn't it?
A lot of it, I feel like getting an illness can be a really big opportunity for personal growth and transformation, and an opportunity to reconnect with your body. I know for myself, for a big part of my life, I was so disconnected from my body. So my body would try to tell me something. And you know what I would do? I would try to suppress it with acid suppressant medications. It would try to tell me something wasn't right, and I would take antidiarrheal medications. And it's, eventually I figured out that the subtle messages the body was sending me were that the foods that I was eating weren't right with me, weren't right for me. And I learned how to adjust my diet accordingly. But since that point, I've had more awakenings to the power of my body. And now, my body tells me things that I would have thought were crazy if you asked me about this in pharmacy school. But for example, I had this summer, I was working on a really big project, and I had somebody that I was working with that was a very challenging person. But yet I try to be polite and I try to be nice. And there were some things they were doing that were out of alignment with my ethics and morals. And I didn't know this at the time, but every time I was around this person, I started getting acid reflux. And I was like, what is my body trying to tell me? What is my body trying to tell me? And eventually I learned that this person, was doing some things that were out of alignment with what we had agreed to. And once I was able to speak my mind and let them know what I was not okay with and get this all out in the open and, part ways in the way we were working together, the acid reflux vanished, and it wasn't something that I needed to change my diet for necessarily that time or take medications for or anything like that. But it's just amazing what happens when you're in communication with your body. And I mean, this is just one little example, but what I've seen in people and in myself is when people recover their health and they learn to tune in, they make transformations in so many different places in their lives, whether that's changing careers or having romantic partners that they never were hoping for, or even, leaving people that are not supportive. And it's just like, you can really align with what's true for you when you reestablish that connection within your body.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I want to go into a few protocols. I know I'm going to have to let you go soon, but before I do that, it seems like one of the important tenets or lessons that we can get from our body is probably more self-love and self-compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about what's happening in autoimmune disease, it's you attacking you. And when we think about a lot of the patterns that I've seen in people with autoimmune diseases, many of them tend to be type A. They tend to be very hard on themselves. They tend to push themselves past the point where they should be resting. And so what I like to think about is, if you are somebody that is sick, try to take on a different perspective, where think about somebody that you know, that you love, and maybe you don't have any kind of expectations of. So this might be like a niece or a cousin or a little child or even a pet, right? And think about what you would do if that person was sick. What would you say to them? How would you support them? If that person missed an exam because they were tired, would you call them an idiot and say that they failed? No, you would say, wow, you're really going through a lot. It seems like you need to have more rest. And so now the challenge is, like, how do you turn that on yourself? And you have to be kind to yourself and be compassionate to yourself. So say nice things to yourself, give yourself a hug, treat yourself like you would a loved one, because really the healing starts with you. If you don't take the time to rest, nobody can do it for you. If, you can go to the best doctors and read the top books that tell you every single thing you need to do, but ultimately it's up to you to implement it. And it starts with self-care and self-compassion.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. From there, let's talk about a few of the fundamental protocols. What is the liver support protocol, and why is this so important?
So when I first got my health back, it took me quite a few different years, because I was trying all these different things and going after various root causes and triggers. When I started working with people with Hashimoto's, I wanted to figure out what I can do to help accelerate their health. And I also had some people who were very sensitive to everything in their environment, and even supplements I was giving them, really benign ones, they would have reactions to. And so I started doing a little bit more research, and I learned that there are certain things you can do for that to help minimize those reactions. And I came across doing some liver support and helping the liver clear out toxins out of the body. And I started doing this with my clients, and I saw dramatic improvements. The best thing is that the improvements happened within a 2-week time period. So people that had been struggling for decades, or people that had been struggling for even months that I was working with on trying to get different protocols for them, when we did the liver support, within the first week or two, they were saying, my headaches are gone, my fatigue is much better, I'm sleeping better, my joint pains are gone, my brain's working, I feel happier, I'm losing a little bit of weight, not unhealthy amounts of weight, but just wow, it's kind of falling off. And so I started doing this with everybody across the board, and I ended up doing a group program where I was able to take a large number of people and then survey them, and 65% of them saw significant improvements with the liver support protocol. Basically what we're doing is we're removing toxins that are in your everyday life, and then we're supporting your liver's ability to clear toxins. So what I like to think about of a person in any autoimmune disease, any kind of chronic health condition, especially Hashimoto's, is you have a toxic backlog. So you're like that government worker with tons of papers stacked up on her desk, and it's taking you a few weeks to process something that should take 5 minutes. And that's what's happening in Hashimoto's. We have this backlog of toxins, and once we help to clear it out, the symptoms improve.
What are a few of the toxins that we're probably not even aware of that are in our environment or that are getting into our liver that are early ones to start stripping away?
One of the big ones for thyroid disease is fluoride. Now, fluoride is in our water supply, and we have fluoride in our toothpaste, and we have this essentially drug that's being placed within our water supplies. Not many people know this, but fluoride was used as a thyroid suppressing drug before methimazole was available. And this is something like if you're drinking your 6 to 8 cups of water and you're not filtering your water, you could be giving yourself enough fluoride to suppress your thyroid function. So that's what I recommend, is doing a fluoride filter. Reverse osmosis usually works best as a starting point. Another big thing for women especially is personal care products. Now, there have been numerous studies done in personal care products, and a lot of them, the conventional ones, are actually quite toxic. So lead, arsenic, mercury have been found in personal care products, as well as a host of other heavy metals, not to mention endocrine disrupting chemicals. So things like parabens. These are things that basically can get into your body and cause an imbalance of your hormones. And one of the things I recommend for women especially is to do a personal care cleanse where you don't use personal care products for 2 weeks. So no potions, no lotions, no lipstick, no makeup. The alternate is, of course, you can invest in like organic products from EWG, where you just purchase everything that rates between 1 and 3 on the Environmental Working Group Safe Cosmetics database. So you can either, go free for 2 weeks or just replace everything if you're not comfortable not wearing makeup or not using soap and things like that.
Thank you. And let's talk about maybe a couple liver supporting things. Like I was really excited by turmeric tea.
Yeah, so turmeric is something that's really, really helpful for the thyroid gland. It is a spice, and it's quite tasty. You can utilize it in all kinds of different ways. One of the ways that I like to utilize it is in turmeric tea, and this is a wonderful mixture. You take a little bit of turmeric. You can mix it up with things that you like. One of the key things is you're going to want to put some pepper in there because that helps to improve the absorption of the turmeric. And I also like to add, your choice of sweetener, maybe some stevia in there. You mix that up and then you drink that as a tea. This is going to help to support your liver's detoxification pathways. Turmeric also has some fantastic anti-cancer properties. A lot of times people will say that they feel significantly better once they start implementing and utilizing turmeric. Big reduction in pain symptoms, which is always really exciting to see.
And I am a huge turmeric fan, and sometimes my meals become turmeric delivery systems. How much can you hide in there? Because it has a very, very strong, if you've had curry, you've had a hint of turmeric. It can be quite overpowering when taken in large doses.
I like to mix it up with some ginger and then some, honey or stevia, and that usually kind of balances out the flavors, and it can be quite yummy.
Yay. So let's go from there and let's talk real briefly about the adrenal recovery protocol.
The adrenal recovery protocol is the second of my series of 3 fundamental protocols. So the fundamental protocols are things that every person with Hashimoto's can do to recover their health, regardless of their root cause. In this protocol, we're focusing on the stress response and how to lower that. And so one of the big things is getting enough rest. So making sure you're giving your body an opportunity to rest. And that means you're sleeping. That means you're cutting out caffeine. So you're preventing your body from staying awake when it shouldn't stay awake, because that's really what caffeine does. It gets us to drive our bodies further than they should be driven. And we're really looking at starting to do some positive mantras and starting to incorporating some relaxing routines into your life. I know, you're a big fan of meditation, and that can be extremely helpful for people in really I saw a really interesting study the other day. It talked about how daily meditation is more relaxing than actually going on a vacation for a few weeks, because it's something that we incorporate in our day-to-day life. And I know that's been something that's been dramatically helpful for me as well as for many of my clients. And it gets you to slow down and puts your body into that healing mode. So you go from like the overdrive and breaking yourself down and driving to rest, digest, and heal when you incorporate meditation into your life.
Couldn't agree more. So let's go real briefly from there to the gut balance. Since you're talking about digest, the gut balance protocol.
Yeah, the gut balance protocol. So we know that every person with Hashimoto's and every autoimmune disease is going to have gut impairments and gut imbalance. And so one of the keys to recovering your health is actually addressing the health of your gut. You and I both had irritable bowel syndrome. So for us, it was obvious that our gut was out of balance. For some people, they might not have any symptoms, or they may have things that they think are normal. So they might not have well-formed bowel movements, or they might have stomach pains. And once they actually start to address the health of their gut, they realize that, holy cow, these things were actually not normal. And so what we start doing is we're looking at getting digestive enzymes on board. The digestive enzymes are going to help your body to extract more nutrients from your food and break down food properly so that it's no longer a burden for you. That's one of the really big things. We're going to be using systemic enzymes as well, which help to clean up some of the reactions that the body has made to foods. So one of the things that happens in autoimmune disease is that people get numerous food sensitivities. And it's sort of like one of those chicken or egg things. And when you have autoimmune disease, you're going to be sensitive to a lot of things. And then these food sensitivities will continue to perpetuate the autoimmune disease. So really, to break the cycle apart, you have to get off of the foods, and then you have to figure out a way to get your immune system to stop reacting to them. One wonderful way is through using systemic enzymes on an empty stomach, because they break down the immune complexes that are made to the food. So then the immune system no longer recognizes the food as enemy. And so that way you can start incorporating more foods into your diet once you follow along with this protocol.
So I'm curious, have you been able to incorporate any gluten back into your diet, or not? It wouldn't even try?
For me, I wouldn't try because of my reactions to it. I should say I've been exposed to it on accident, and my reactions have not been as bad as what they used to be. So when I had it in the past, I would have, horrific reactions with my stomach, and that would last for a few days where my mood was off and I had joint pains. I was exposed to it on accident in 2014 that I know of. This was after I recovered my health. And at that point, I just had a little bit of bloating and that was gone. But I haven't tried it since then. I have had some people that have used the protocols that I've mentioned in my book, including the gut protocols, and they've been able to reintroduce gluten and dairy successfully. For me, that those are just two things that I won't eat, but everything else I can tolerate. And we didn't talk about this, but at one point I was limited to, a small number of foods where I was only not reacting to 6 or 7 foods. And so now I've been able to incorporate grains, all kinds of foods back into my life without having any reactions to them.
Awesome. As we start to wrap things up, can you tell me, one of the fun things I joked about early in the interview is probiotic toothpaste.
Yes. Probiotic toothpaste is fantastic. So the mouth can actually be a place that triggers thyroid disease. So we could have mouth bacteria and pathogens that contribute to autoimmune disease. There's actually studies that show this. One of the things you could do is you could balance your flora in the mouth, and this will prevent cavities. So you could toss away your fluoride-containing toothpaste that's destroying your thyroid gland and start incorporating some toothpaste. Periobiotic toothpaste is one I really like. And you use it and you give your mouth healthy probiotics, and that helps to restore the flora in your mouth. They've done studies in people who get cavities and who don't get cavities, and they've isolated the beneficial bacteria. And you can now get this in a toothpaste. The only difference is you don't really rinse out your mouth at the end, which can be a little bit hard to get used to. But other than that, it's fantastic.
I love it. I'm going to try this myself. This is something years ago we used on our dogs before there was anything that was I don't know, it was FDA or whatever approved to use on humans. And you'd spray it in the dog's mouth and they wouldn't get tartar, or the tartar would go away because of the probiotics that they were taking in the mouth.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes veterinary medicine has more of these advances before they get into human medicine, right?
Exactly. So as we wrap this up, and everybody, again, get Hashimoto's Protocol. There's way too much that we can possibly cover today. But tell us, as we're winding this down, attitude of gratitude. How important is that?
Wow. Gratitude, this is the way that you're going to recover your health. So I've worked with so many people now, and I've found the ones that really focus on gratitude are the ones that recover their health. So they're thinking about the small successes they've had. Every time they eliminate a symptom, they're like, I'm so grateful for this. Versus the people that keep focusing on all the things that are still wrong. When you focus on the successes you've had, you're going to create more successes. And this is a huge, huge thing. And it's a quick way to turn your life around and to make yourself feel better and start kind of encouraging your body to keep moving.
Thank you. No pun intended, since we're talking about gratitude, and thank you. Real quickly, dental amalgams, dental x-rays, and I know I've got to go in for some dental work soon. In fact, I've got a few amalgams that I want to get yanked out, but by the right kind of dentist in the next year. Right. But what's a thyroid shield? Okay,
so one of the things that can happen is radiation can be problematic for the thyroid gland, even low levels of radiation. And so one of the things you can do when you go and get dental x-rays, because that's a part of our care nowadays, you can either refuse them, or if you've had some in past years and nothing has changed, or you can get a thyroid shield that goes over your thyroid gland. You can order it on Amazon, and that blocks the radiation from the dental x-rays. It can make a big difference.
I would refuse the ones that are traditional x-rays, go with the digital if I can't get them to not do an x-ray. But this sounds I wish I had thought about it. I wanted to take the shield before and actually yank it up to my chin. So this makes sense. So on that note, where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
So the book is available everywhere. So it's going to be available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and in bookstores. And if they wanted to connect with me, they could come over to thyroidpharmacist.com, and thyroidpharmacist.com/gift will have some resources, including nutrient depletions and digestion guide to how to get you on the right path to digesting your foods properly and extracting nutrients from them so you feel better right away. And then a quick starter diet guide, as well as some recipes.
Fantastic. If you didn't catch that, come on over to InspireNationShow.com. We'll get you over to her as well so that you can get your free gift. You can get everything over there. So 2 last quick questions for you. First off, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Really, for me, the big woohoo factor is seeing success stories. So every time I get a message from a reader or a client or somebody that's come across my work, and they say, hey, I've tried this and I've been able to recover my health. I used to be on disability, now I'm back at work. Or I was able to finally have my first child because of something you recommended. That just really melts my heart, and it makes me feel like I'm living my purpose, and I love it.
And that is a woo!
Yes, woo!
So any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today?
One thing that I really want to share with anybody listening at home is to really invest in yourself and really care for yourself. I know in our modern society, it's like taking care of ourselves is considered selfish, because we're basically we're told that our achievements matter or how we take care of other people matter. But really, if you are running on empty and if you're depleted, you're not going to be able to take care of another person. You're not going to be able to achieve. So fill your own cup so that you can give from your overflow. That's my biggest message to people that are out in the world, is to take care of themselves so that they can help the world become a better place.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And on that note, we were talking before the show, get yourself out to nature as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So thank you so much for being on the show, Izabella. This has been so much fun. Love what you're doing, and I think it's incredibly empowering for people to find that what you've been told is not the whole answer, and there's a lot you can do about it.
Thank you so much. I love the work that you're doing, and it's been such an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get Hashimoto's Protocol, and turn your health around, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, just you're such an amazing host, and that was so much fun.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!